come on again. Our last speaker is Kamryn Stringfield. Yeah. Kamryn is a local activist and a member of the Springfield Eugene Anti-Imperialist Coalition.
Yeah!
Here comes trouble.
I want to take it off. Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Rob, for that introduction. And I want to thank Allah and Sam and Justin and Shakar and, am I missing anybody for speakers? The Ceasefire Choir, the Raging Grannies, and of course all of you that took time out of your day to come here and help us kick off what we have dubbed Intifada Week. Yeah. And when I'm done with my speech today, I'm going to let you know about all of the events that are coming up that you can go to stay plugged into the struggle for the defense of Palestine. Yeah. Usually I go ahead and just read a speech, and sometimes I do it off the cuff, but today I struck a neutral thing and I have an outline to help me go through what I'm talking about. Yeah. So what we've heard today is we started out hearing from a Palestinian, and then we heard about what's going on in the last year with the genocide in Palestine that is now spread to escalation in Lebanon and Syria and Yemen and with Iran, etc. We heard about the violations of international law by the Zionist state of Israel. We heard poems from Shakar about the current genocide, and now I want to bring it back to where we are standing here today in Eugene, Oregon. And I want to talk about this last year of activism here in Eugene, the current things that we are doing, and the importance, the absolute paramount importance of working in coalition with one another. I think we might take it for granted sometimes, but it's really vital, not just to the liberation of Palestine, but to the liberation of us all from imperialism, which is the ultimate problem in which we are facing. So the first thing that I want to talk about is the history, the last year of activism here in Eugene. Let's think back to 1 year ago today, October 5th, 2023. This is before the resistance forces of Palestine broke that damn wall and went past the Green Line into Israel. We're talking about a time before there were all of these Palestine protests happening in Eugene, before the Springfield Eugene Anti-Imperialist Coalition, before all of us coming out to events like this. What did the Eugene activist scene look like before this? Now, when I say what I'm going to say about this, I don't mean any disrespect to the groups that were already here doing the tremendous work on housing and fossil fuel reduction and women's rights and black liberation and all of that. They were all doing wonderful work. But what I observed was that all of these forces, their struggles are interconnected by imperialism, but they weren't connected.
Bingo.
So you had all of these disparate struggles going on, and people weren't really sharing resources. I mean, you might have a friend that is active in another thing, so you go to an event with them, but there was never from what I saw, and I'm willing to be corrected if I'm wrong, there was never a concerted effort to bring together the progressive forces of Eugene for a common cause. So I want to talk to you about what happened after October 7th and how we got to now. The first protest that happened after October 7th was a protest on October 21st, 2023 that had over 300 people that attended it. Yeah! It was a wonderful show of resistance to the genocide that was starting to unfold in Gaza as Israel forces started to go into Gaza and murder thousands of people. I think by the first week or two, it was like 11,000 people. That is insane. But we got out there on the streets and we marched in the streets against the genocide. I remember that there was a man that pulled up in a truck and acted like he was going to shoot some of us. I think he might have even fired some paintball rounds into the crowd, and there was like a little stampede about it. A friend of mine had broke their leg because of it. So it just goes to show you how chaotic it was when it first started. Everybody's passion was on fire at that point. But that wasn't the last protest, nor should it have been. I tried to connect with the organizers of that event at the end of it. And I don't know, for whatever reason, I never heard back. I don't know if it was gatekeeping. I don't know if it was security culture and they wanted to keep their organizing safe. There might be justified reasons for it. I'm not sure. But everybody that I had talked to wanted to see more happen. We knew we had to keep protesting, and we knew we couldn't wait a month or two for one or two groups to organize it themselves. People wanted action. So the first other protests that I saw that I started going to was the weekly ceasefire vigils that Planet versus Pentagon was putting out on here, right here at 7th and Pearl, every Wednesday for a whole year. That is incredible, the dedication that you showed. But I went to this event and I talked to them, and they were on a different political level than the people that had organized the other event, but they had a common cause, which was standing up for Palestine. And at that moment, I said, I want to get these forces connected with the other forces so that we can keep this going and build a movement on this. Yeah. And I had to wait a little bit. It got to November, and one of the groups here had put on an educational, and a lot of us had went to that because it was the first event that they had put on since the October 21st protest. And it was a great educational on the history of the Palestinian armed resistance that goes back all the way to the Nakba and before. And at the end of that educational, it was like, well, let's sit around and wait. We've got to go to our board and organize another protest, and it might not be for a month. And we're all sitting there like, no, we need action now. We want to do something now. People are dying every day. We can't just sit around and wait a month. So we started to connect. We started to have meetings, little interpersonal meetings between one another, making connections, getting people from different groups connected. And then we met at World Pies and decided to form a coalition. We had an idea for a coalition on Palestine. But then, of course, we understood that the world is volatile, and the reason why what's happening in Palestine is happening is because of imperialism. And ultimately, what drives us together is our anti-imperialism. So we started to form the Springfield Eugene Anti-Imperialist Coalition, SEEK.
Yeah, baby.
And that took a while. It took a while, and it was hard. It was hard. It was hard to bring together people from completely different ideologies and backgrounds and passions together in a room to decide how we were going to struggle together, how we were going to build this, what would it look like. So we got it started, and we, started drafting our mission statement and our points of unity and all of that. We started working together. We started trying to organize at least one big event a month that we could show people that we are going to keep resisting this genocide until it is over. I remember one of the first big events after the October 21st protest was a shut it down protest that we did. We started here at 7th and Pearl, and we went over there to the Nike store. Nike is complicit in the genocide, so we did a die-in there, and then we marched all the way across the Ferry Street Bridge, which has its own history of colonialism and racism, and went to Alton Baker Park and then to Autzen Stadium to protest with the students of U of O who were starting up their own campaign for divestment to get the University of Oregon, the largest institution in Eugene, maybe one of the largest institutions in Oregon, to stand against the genocide. And SJP U of O formed, and JVP U of O formed, and they all started their work. And we lined up right behind them and side by side to struggle with these students that were making history, that were repeating the same struggles that the students did to stop the genocidal war in Vietnam in the 60s and 70s, and to stop apartheid South Africa, and to stand up against the bloody wars in Iraq and Afghanistan following 9/11. So we go into the winter of 2023, going into 2024. We started going to the city council, asking for the most minimal thing they could do, something that didn't even have a material effect, which was call for a ceasefire. Call for a ceasefire. Say that you're against the genocide. It's not that damn hard.
That's right.
And it took us a bit. And we gave them a resolution. And they didn't pass that exact language. They passed a measly resolution that only called for ceasefire peace talks. But it did say ceasefire. And when the media spoke about it in the Oregonian and other outlets across the state, they said Eugene was one of the cities to call for a ceasefire. And I take that as one of the victories that we had. And it laid the groundwork to say, okay, you oppose war and you're supportive of peace. Now put your money where your mouth is. And I'll talk more about that as I go on. But then as the new year started, as we went into the year that we're still in, it's about to end here soon, 2024, there were more global days of action. There were more protests ahead. I remember there was a global day of action that was supposed to happen, I think it was like January 13th. And we were going to have a rally in March. We thought it might look like this. If people can remember, there was a freak ice storm, which, you know, thank you, climate change, another thing of imperialism. There was a freak ice storm. There was a layer of ice that was so thick, you would have thought it was snow, but it was just ice. And we still got out there, and we still had the rally, and we still spoke out against the genocide, even when most people were just trying to stay home to not get injured on the ice. That's right. And that was incredible at the time. It showed our dedication to this struggle. Then I remember, as we went into February, there was the Protest to Divest event, where SJP and the students did a march as part of their campaign for divestment. And unfortunately, it was probably the start of repression against our protesters here in Eugene. 2 people were arrested pretty brutally that day by the Eugene Police Department. The Eugene Police Department, of which all of the cops are bastards. The atrocious Eugene Police Department started to crack down on our protests, got one of our protesters pinned to the ground, and then arrested them. And luckily, our community pulled together the jail support resources to get them out and to stand against that repression. And as we went into spring, we started to do more things that weren't just protests, that weren't just marches and rallies. We started to do skill-based workshops and teach people how to be medics, how to de-escalate, how to, do media, all of these things. We started to have art builds. I remember there was an art build that happened at Westmoreland Park, where there's the big bridge that goes over 18th Avenue. And we dropped banners all over that bridge, showing traffic all day long. And we were still out there. It might have been 2024. The media cycle might have moved on, but we didn't. We were still out there, and we were going to stay out there. And we all took that art that we had from that day and took it to other events. There was the March 15th rally in March for Gaza, where the coalition really showed. We brought together, I don't know how many, it was like 10, 15 organizations, from radical to liberal, from anarchist to Democrat, together to protest on the streets, to stand with the students, to show our community and our resistance, and to show, once again, that we weren't going to stop. Then, of course, as we get into April, we started the campaign for city divestment. And it wasn't very much language for them to accept either. It was really simple. We wanted a human rights-based investment policy. We wanted a citizens committee like Portland has. They already have it. They've had it since 2016 to review the city's divestments and to create a do not buy list for certain corporations. Portland even went further with that later on. They went ahead and expanded that to basically a do not buy list of sectors. We're not going to buy anything in arms and weapons. We're not going to buy anything in alcohol and tobacco. We're not going to invest in anything that harms people here or abroad. And that's what we were trying to bring to them. And constantly they have stalled and hesitated and gave us every reason why they won't divest. They even told us recently, and I'll get into this later, that their money that was invested in corporations, it wasn't significant. It's only 1.7% of their portfolio. It's only millions of dollars. So you got millions of dollars. Raise your hand if you got millions of dollars. Good, we don't have any millionaires here today. But so we started that campaign for city divestment. But by April, we had done so many things. We had went to the city council. We had went to the board of trustees at the University of Oregon. We had done every kind of march and protest and die-in and sit-in and educational and every letter writing campaign that we could have done. And a lot of brave protesters took action on tax day on April 15th and joined in with an international call to action to block commerce. And I forget, was it like 50? How many protesters was it?
It was just about 60 protesters down there that got arrested that day.
60 protesters that stepped onto I-5 and faced mass arrests by the bastard law enforcement agencies here. And it was a huge event. It's still being covered because they're still being repressed. And I'll get to that later, but it was one of the biggest highlights of the year, I think, to me, to see all of those people get onto that highway and then be so brutally repressed by the police department.
Yeah.
And the repression is another part of that struggle. It's another part of the struggle against imperialism. The police forces, the law enforcement forces that repress those protesters are merely protecting capitalist interests. They weren't doing it for people's safety. They were doing it for profit.
Right.
And then, of course, at the end of April, end of May, we saw another one of the biggest highlights of this last year of activism, which was when the U of O students shocked the city by launching an encampment at the University of Oregon that lasted almost a month. And they sat out on the quad and every single day did all these kinds of workshops and meetings to connect people to every part of the struggle. And people might have their own opinions about how that encampment went. It just goes to show that there's going to be challenges when we work together with each other. But at the end of the day, they made history. They repeated once again the struggle against the Vietnam War when people launched their own liberation zones back in the 60s and 70s. And they constantly faced the fear of being swept by the Eugene Police Department or by the U of O Police Department.
Right.
And of course, when it ended, they got an agreement with the U of O administration, which people can have their opinions on, but it was something. And it's something for them to hold the U of O administration to. So as we went into the summer and the encampment ended and people went different places for the summer, but it's summertime. People needed a break. People go on vacation. People go out to the river. It's very hard for us. People can get burnt out. So you can understand why after months and months there might have been less action. But I remember in June, it was Pride Month. We had multiple Pride events in Eugene. Eugene Pride isn't in June. Don't ask me why. I'm not part of it. But we wanted to have Pride events to show the intersectionality of these issues, to show that the oppression of LGBT plus people, I'm one, hi, I'm a trans woman, I see it every day. The oppression of LGBT plus people is another part of imperialism. And that the pinkwashing that they use to defend Israel and to attack Palestinians is pure bullshit. Queer people live openly in Palestine. Queer people write from Palestine. Queer people give liberatory demands to the rest of the queer community from Palestine that we often ignore. So we went ahead and had protests in that month. I think there was a pink washing event, there was a Pride was a Riot event, there were these events to connect ourselves once again to that anti-imperialist struggle. And as July came on and August happened, there were less events. There were still different small protests happening. Of course, Planet versus Pentagon was still continuing those weekly vigils every week, keeping strong even when not much was happening. But of course, we went to Eugene Pride in August. We tabled there. Wasn't much, but honest work. And then we get to around now, the present moment, going into fall, looking at 1 year of this struggle. And I think the biggest things at present are the campaigns for divestment at the city of Eugene. I've been spearheading some of that. They're gonna have their next city council meeting on August 7th, but you might be at the march and rally that's gonna be happening for the Intifada protest. So it'll be, the next city council meeting will be 2 weeks after that. And we're gonna continue to pressure them to divest, to tell them that millions of dollars going to Amazon, which is on the pressure list for the BDS, and millions of dollars going to Apple, which has reportedly matched some of their salaries with money that goes to the IDF, to show them that that is not insignificant. If it's, quote, only 1.7%, then Mayor Venice, why are you stalling?
Right.
Why?
Right.
Why are you giving every reason in the world to not listen to your community and to not divest from genocide? It is disingenuous. We need to go ahead and go to the city council, even if it may seem useless, and to remind them that we are their constituents and we're going to pressure them as long as they stay complicit in the genocide. And they are complicit in the genocide. They're directly tied to the genocide. If a single fraction of a penny is going to Israel or to any sort of proxy that is helping in this genocide, then they are complicit in it. And they cannot deny that. They can't, it's not significant. No, it is significant. So there's that, and then of course, plug into Students for Justice in Palestine and Jewish Voices for Peace on the U of O campus to stay connected to their divestment struggle. I'm not exactly plugged in. I don't know what's gonna happen. But that's why you should listen to the students on the student struggle. And also, at present, the A15 defendants, the Eugene 19, continue to face repression. They continue to face charges from the DA. They continue to fear what may happen to them in the near future. And so I want you to, I think A15 Eugene is another Instagram page you can plug into to keep updated with their trials and with their calls to action and with their calls to protest, and understand that the repression that could happen to them could happen to any one of us at any one of these events, because the police department is not predictable. The police department can crack down on any one of these protests because they are not really protecting your rights or your freedom of speech. So standing up for the Eugene 19, whatever you think of what they did on A15, is the right thing to do.
Yeah.
So as I've described the present and the things that are going to be going on, and of course follow the Eugene Anti-Imperialist Coalition. It's at anti.imperialist.coalition on Instagram. You're going to see all of the events that we're going to be doing here soon, and I'm going to list some of those at the end. But I want to talk a little bit about the importance of coalition. Why should we work in coalition together? Why is the Springfield Eugene Anti-Imperialist Coalition important after 1 year? Well, first we can understand a couple of obvious things. A coalition is a meeting place for all willing progressives and leftists to work with each other, to share resources, skills, and knowledge, to build with each other, We've all learned different skills and tactics, not just in these struggles for Palestine, but we've learned it in the various struggles from before, the housing struggles and the black struggles and the LGBT struggles. We've all got these skills that we can pull together to help each other. The coalition itself can prevent any one force here from forming a monopoly on local activism. We're not looking for control. We're not looking for predominance. We're not looking for one ideological group or the other to say, we run things in Eugene. Why should you? Why should you? We should work together.
Yeah.
It's better for us to work together and to not self-isolate, to not alienate each other, to not push each other away. We have strength in numbers. We have strength in camaraderie. We have strength and trust in one another.
Right. Yeah.
We are stronger together. Sectarianism divides and weakens us. It truly does. We're all passionate about our ideologies. We're all passionate about the organizations we're in, about our specific struggles. But at the end of the day, are you here to be right? Or are you here to win?
Right, that's it.
Are you here to say, well, we took control? Or are you here to say, hey, I may be 60 years old now, but when I was in my 20s, we helped contribute to the liberation of Palestine together. And that's the thing. Palestine needs us. We need to stay connected to the national and international mass movements in defense of Palestine. We need to understand that we have the privilege of pushing each other away. We have the privilege of disagreeing with each other. We have the privilege of hanging it up and saying, oh, it's too much for me. I can't handle it. It's too stressful. When I go to these meetings and somebody disagrees with me, I just want to hide my head in the dirt. Well, guess what? There's a lot of people whose heads are buried in the dirt and rubble of Palestine right now, and they don't have the luxury of pushing away people they disagree with. You look at what happened on October 7th. There was a coalition in Palestine that did that Liberation Act of Hamas and PFLP and DFLP and various other groups in Palestine that have different ideological perspectives, but they work together in unison for liberation. Can we do that? Can we do that? Can we work together for liberation? I think we can. I think that we have the ability to put aside our egos, to put aside our differences, to put aside our histories or whatever tensions that we have with each other, and continue to work together and compromise with each other and work towards our common goal, the end of imperialism. At the end of the day, we all value our children's future. At the end of the day, we all want a community where we have enough food and water and housing and health care to live comfortably and to thrive. These are the things that we're struggling for, and we should struggle for them together. We understand how our struggles are intersected. The homeless issue in Eugene is connected to the issue of Palestine. We see that all the time. We see how our government sends millions of dollars, billions of dollars to the Zionist-Israeli regime instead of taking care of infrastructure and healthcare in this country. And we see how the city of Eugene sends millions of dollars to its damn police department for drones and community resource officers and all of this shit, instead of focusing it on actually affordable housing and infrastructure here in Eugene. They want to take away permits so that homeless people can't even eat. Meanwhile, I think every one of those city councilors has got a good dinner tonight. So we have had challenges together, and we will have challenges together, but we will get through them together, and we will rise above. We simply have to. We don't have a choice. We don't have time. There's other issues. There's climate change at play. The world is a volatile place right now. Palestine's the forefront issue, but it might not be tomorrow. Think about the war in Ukraine. Think about what's happening between China and Taiwan. Think about the escalations with Iran. Think about the border right now. Think about all of the places around the world where things can escalate and get out of hand. Nuclear bombs are still dangling over us every day. It's less than 90 seconds to midnight. It's even worse than it was in the Cuban Missile Crisis. So this is why we're here together. This is why we're struggling together, because imperialism will kill us if we fail.
Right.
And it won't be quick and painless. The coalitions in the 60s and 70s did amazing things, but they fell apart. Even, what's the name of it? It's Students for a Democratic Society, SDS, started off, and it was one of the biggest forces in the New Left at the time that was protesting the war in Vietnam. But because of its own internal problems and because of sniping between different ideologies, it too fell apart and splintered into a million different groups, all of which you wouldn't recognize the name of today. And a lot of the people that were involved in those protests back then got burnt out, got alienated, and even got comfortable with capitalism. You'd be surprised how many of the people that used to be activists during the 60s and 70s quickly became Reaganite conservatives. It can happen. And don't think that Gen Z can't see the same thing happen to them which happened to the boomers. We're not special. We're not special. We're just another generation. We just happen to be born at the beginning of the millennium. But we're not immune to propaganda, and we're not immune to the same mistakes of the past. So it's up to us to rectify this past and to do it right. It can be done.
Yeah.
And to conclude, I want to go ahead and shout out and thank a lot of local organizations who have done tremendous work in the last year for Palestine. I want to thank the U of O Students for Justice in Palestine and faculty and staff for Justice in Palestine. Go ahead and give them a round of applause. I want to thank Jewish Voices for Peace, the U of O and Eugene chapters, which formed in the last year and have been doing tremendous anti-Zionist work to show you that Jews can stand against the genocide, that Jews can stand against Israel. I want to thank the Neighborhood Anarchist Collective and the Revolutionary Women's Committee and the Eugene Revolutionary Study Group. I want to thank Planet versus Pentagon and Veterans for Peace. I want to thank Party for Socialism and Liberation. I want to thank Eugene chapter of the Pacific Green Party, especially Justin Phillip, for standing up against these two genocide-supporting candidates, Val Hoyle, and I can't even remember what the other one's name is right off. But, yeah. I want to thank Eugene Springfield Democratic Socialists of America and UO Young Democratic Socialists of America. I want to thank Extinction Rebellion Eugene chapter. I want to thank the UO Graduate Teaching Fellows Federation. I want to thank the UO Radical Organizing and Activist Center. I want to thank Eugene Healthcare Workers for Palestine. I want to thank all of the local affinity groups that have formed just between different friends and comrades to put on different events, different autonomous actions so that they could still see that they were struggling in their own way for Palestine. And I want to thank any organizations I may have missed, because there was a lot of organizations doing work this year, and it took me a while to even think of all of these to write them down. And of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank all of those others in the Springfield Eugene Anti-Imperialist Coalition and the people that have constantly put the work into keeping it going, and the coordination committee and all of the other committees and all of the meetings that we've had. I know it's stressful work, and I know some of them aren't here today, and I don't know why. But I want to say, keep going. We can do this. What we have is important. What we have is empowering us all and is giving us the tools to actually build this out into a larger anti-imperialist campaign. We're almost at 1 year of the Springfield Eugene Anti-Imperialist Coalition. Let me tell you, Some coalitions don't make it a month. Some don't make it 3 months. Some don't make it 6 months. A lot don't make it a year. Let's keep it going. Let's make it 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, however many years it takes until liberation, because without it, we're all on our own again. And that is not what I want to go back to. So, as I end this off, and before I hand it to the ceasefire choir to close, give me just a second to pull up my phone so I can let you all know about the events that are coming up for Intifada Week. So, give me 1 second, it went away. So at 5:30 today at Riverwood Beach, JVP is having a tashlich, yes, which is, I think it's like a event where it's tossing stones into the river, and those stones represent our transgressions to each other. So like I'm saying, working together and putting our tensions that we've had behind us, or at least understanding how to work together. So I hope that you're able to make it out to that. This Sunday, so tomorrow at 12 p.m. at U of O, there's the People's Orientation at the UO Amphitheater. Right. I hope that you can make it all out to that event as well.
Yeah.
On Monday, October 7th, at the actual 1-year anniversary of the brilliant strike into Israel that the Armed Resistance Forces of Palestine did, there will be a march and rally that starts at the Eugene Federal Courthouse at 5:30 p.m.
Yeah.
And then, of course, on Wednesday, October 9th, there will be, as there always is, another Planet versus Pentagon vigil for a ceasefire. I think at this point, a vigil for Palestinian liberation in general. Not for, you know what I mean. Palestinian liberation isn't dead. It's still alive. Long live Palestine.
Right.
And then on Thursday, October 10th at 11:30 a.m., there will be a Palestine and boycott, divest, sanction teach-in by the grads at a location to be determined on campus. And please stay tuned with the Eugene Anti-Imperialist Coalition on their Instagram to know when all of these events are going to be and where they're going to be at. And lastly, on that same day at 6:30 to 9 p.m., there will be a Community Organizing 101, again, location to be determined on campus.
Yeah.
So I want to thank you all for listening to me. I know I took a lot of time since I was the last speaker to go over the last year of activism in Eugene, but we'll go ahead and go now to Rob.
All right.
Thanks. Okay, awesome. Thanks so much, Kamryn. Once again from Kamryn.